Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, I'm joined by Zoe Harte, Chief People Officer at Upwork. Welcome to the show, Zoe. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Look at you showing off with your new fancy mic.
Yes. Thank you very much. Test run. We shall see.
I wish we could have recorded before everyone that jumped. If you're listening right now and you can't see us, we had a nice little demonstration of the mic and Zoe was setting it up, but you did it for the listeners. So thank you.
I did. There you are. Yes, absolutely. Just what they needed, I'm sure.
Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Wow. So, I've been in HR for about 20 plus years at this point. And my journey, I think, is funny because I think a lot of heads of HR, I didn't mean to do this job. I was supposed to be a professor of philosophy, but I was on leave from my PhD program, or I just finished my master's, was about to start a PhD program. And needed to come back to the States and get, my green card, keep activated. And so, I got a temp job at this little company called Yahoo, and in their HR, wasn't that big then, and ended up being there for a decade and just learned what a difference it could make to be sort of on the people side of a business that cared deeply about the people. I've been really fortunate. I'd grown up with a father who had, a number of jobs leading sales and marketing teams and then was a CEO for many years. And so I knew a reasonable amount about the tech business, but it was never my intent to be here. And so I fell into that, loved it, started in recruitment, moved to HR business partner. And then at the end of my time at Yahoo, I was lucky enough that a mentor of mine who was running our customer care organization brought me over to work directly for her. So I left HR for a couple of years and led part of the international customer care program for Yahoo and was her chief of staff. That to me was sort of the pivotal moment in my HR career because when I returned to HR at companies like Rovi and for the last 8 years, Upwork, I've been able to take what I learned being a recipient of HR's programs and really sort of change my own philosophy about how HR can better the business and kind of get out of people's way a little bit more. And so that was this moment that was sort of an epiphany for me and really opened my eyes to a lot of different things.
So you're talking about you started with philosophy and now you've got a philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It is, maybe circular.
Circular as well. So talk about your current role, Upwork. It was called a different name, if I remember correctly.
We've had a lot of names. Yes. So Upwork was Elance Odesk, and I joined when we were just Odesk in 2013. And then we very quickly did the merger. We rebranded to Upwork in 2015. And now we went public in 2018. And we've got our new CEO for the last year, and she's been amazing. And so good things are happening for the business.
Yeah. For those that aren't aware of Upwork, give them a quick overview.
Yeah. So Upwork is the world's leading talent marketplace. We connect independent professionals to a series of different companies or a variety of different companies, including 30% of the Fortune 100, companies like General Electric, Microsoft, and Airbnb, and also individuals like yourself and me who need smaller things done. But we are, 8,000 different skills on our platform in 800 different cities around the world with specific focus on things like web, mobile, software development.
Wow. And then given current events, I'm assuming you must have exploded over the last 8 months.
Well, it's so interesting because, it's really demonstrated that this remote work genie isn't going back in the bottle, right? We know so many companies have done it this way for a long time. And you've often worked, especially if you work at a multinational company, you're not in the office with everybody with whom you work, but you have, this notion that like you are all connected. And what this sort of everybody going home very rapidly has shown us is that you can do this. Like you can build connection remotely. You and I have never met in person, but like we get along and, that's a couple hours of prep. And so over time, you can continue to build that. And I think it really is about connection and communication. And that's something that has been at the foundation of Upwork in all our iterations for the last 20 years.
It must be quite interesting for you because you've always known, you and the team, that this works. Yeah. That's at the core of what you do. And I know that as an entrepreneur because I use your organization and others, to help us as we're scaling as a business to bring that talent in. or those skills that we
Right,
need
right.
as well. But now it's finally been unleashed. And as you said, there's no longer just putting the genie back in the box.
Well, and it's interesting as well, because I think that for some people who, maybe not suspicious, but slightly skeptical about how effective it could work in their organizations, they've seen that, no, it's actually fine. And we see from the research that we've done that 75% of companies plan to increase the amount of remote talent that they engage with and flexibility in remote work. And we know that a lot of people have no desire to go back into the office 5 days a week when this is finished, right? We see that a third of people who participated in research we did say they're far more productive at home than they were ever in the office. And I think you take away things like the commute and, all of those things, and it makes a huge difference for people in terms of how present they can be when they're not thinking, oh, traffic's going to be a mess, I got to go.
So you must have seen an uptake on both ends, because you're serving two markets. You're serving the organizations and the people like myself that need that skills. They're also serving those people that want to work remotely now, and wherever they want in the world, they can do that from. And now, obviously, you had those people before, but now you've got this huge other community of people that are finally realizing. You only have to look at cities like London, where I live, in New York, where they're just leaving.
Everybody's San Francisco too. Yeah. People are like, that's enough of that. Thank you for the, gigantic house prices. I shall go elsewhere.
Yeah. I do not miss the London Underground either. Sitting on a train, sweating with all these people in a crap house. I said to everyone, it's like, that's probably one of the best things ever that's come out, that I don't have to be on the underground.
Right, where it's so hot and then you go outside and it's damp and cold and you're like, no wonder everybody's got a cold all the time,
Yeah. So how has this then affected the work that you and the team do over the last 8 months?
My goodness. I mean, I feel like even though we are a company that's really based in, sort of the democratization of opportunity and connecting with people remotely, it was hard for everybody, right? I mean, I think it's one thing to know that this works really well when it's intentional and you've got a setup and you've got your fancy microphone or whatever the thing is that you need. But it's another thing when we were monitoring COVID and we canceled participation in conferences and business travel, but we made the decision to close our offices with about 24 hours of notice. And so we told everybody, that's it. Go home for a couple of weeks while this thing, while we get our arms around what this really looks like and how, whether or not it's going to come to the States and be a problem or not. And that was March 6th. And here we are. Oh. And so
we all thought it was going to be a few weeks. Few months.
I left my good chocolate at my desk. I'm like, if I had known I wasn't coming back, I would have brought it home. It's a really interesting thing because we've learned a lot about resilience this year and about people being able to sort of make it through a very hard situation. And I think that one of the things that we've seen has been a real uptick in engagement in our workforce connection, because all of a sudden, everything was just really clearly prioritized, right? It was very clear what mattered to you. It was your health of the people that you loved. And, is the home okay? How are we doing? And everything else became really clearly secondary or third or whatever it was. And so that in and of itself took down all these barriers and the way that we showed up and the way that we connected with each other. I mean, I think I told you the story before, but the very first all hands I had with my HR team after we had gone remote, I showed them a picture of like, this is my remote work setup. And it was at the kitchen counter and it like had some flowers and it was really, like my laptop, some flowers, my cup of coffee. It was great. And then the next slide was like a zoomed out version of that, where it was like, groceries we hadn't bleached yet and and put away, and a stack of my kids' papers from schools and all of those things, and kind of not a full disaster, but it wasn't great. And I think it just helped us normalize, like, we're all going through this. It doesn't matter where you sit in the organization. All of a sudden, everything's drastically different. And it became this tremendous equalizer for us. And I think that allowed a different level of vulnerability, authenticity, and connection amongst teams, because they knew that their boss was in the same pickle they were in. And I think, one of the big things that we talk about a lot now at Upwork is like, look, remote work works great when it's intentional and you choose it and you've got to set up and all those things. But what we've done this year is show that we can be, as a company and as a society, that we can be productive and engaged and make a difference for our customers, even when there's so much, tumult and challenge around us. Our kids are at home. We're trying to figure out their on-screen learning and all these different things. And if we can do it in that situation at our kitchen tables, then when things calm down and we have a vaccine and the children return to school and we're far less worried about, those in our, communities and houses of worship and all that place with the old and folks who are immune compromised, when that's off our plates, imagine what we're going to be able to do. Because we've done it this year, 2021, 2022. I mean, we're going to be golden.
Yeah, you're right. And I do agree that we feel like, even though I keep saying this, so all of you that listen to every episode, I'm sorry that I say this in every episode, but I do feel like although we're so further apart physically, we've never been closer together.
Precisely.
Emotionally, because I feel like I've got a stronger connection with all of my team.
Yes.
Now than I've ever had before, because we were all going through this. We're all connected. We all have challenges, and we've created that safe place for everyone to be open and be vulnerable and leading with empathy, as well. And that's one of the silver linings.
I agree.
Just come out of this, and I hope that. And I'm sure there's no going back. I don't think it can go back. So yeah. So are you? What is the decision that you and the team have made in terms of, is it a hybrid model? Is it completely remote now? What's I see a lot of companies now going, look, no more offices, shutting those down. There's so many different approaches. What have you guys decided on?
Yeah, it's interesting. So because of our model, we've always been a hybrid company. So we have 550 corporate employees, who the bulk of whom have been in offices in the States. But because we use our own platform, we've had 1,200 plus independent talent working directly back with our business for many years. I mean, that's the foundation of our company. So we've always had that. And so what we've seen this year is, as we were saying earlier, a sort of a democratization of how people show up and engage, because all of a sudden there was no groundswell of people in a corporate office who were dominating the conversation and then being like, oh yes, what about so-and-so who's calling in from wherever? And so because everybody's been on the screen, it's been tremendous in terms of bubbling up ideas for innovation. And so we want to harness that, and we want to keep that momentum going. The decision that we have made, we have 3 offices: Chicago, San Francisco, and Santa Clara down in the South Bay in California. We are looking to sublease our office in San Francisco and also Santa Clara. We're going to keep our office in Chicago. That's where the bulk of our sales team is. And we know for them, there's a very strong preference to be
as
physically
a former sales
together.
director, that they're the people
you guys love
they need
it,
that
right?
environment. They need that morale. That's one of the things I worried about my team is, selling is really about the energy that comes from your team around you a lot as well, and the buzz. And on your own, I can imagine that's a good decision.
I think it's harder. Yeah. And our Chicago office is electric. It's amazing when you walk in there. It feels so bubbly, and people are so enthusiastic about what we're doing and connecting with clients all the time and customers to understand the difference Upwork is making for their business. And so it's this really phenomenal place to spend time, regardless of whether you're in sales or not.
I'm assuming you've announced this already, because we're talking about it now.
Yeah, no, this is all new.
What was the feedback like from those people that were in those other 2 offices that actually wanted to be in a work environment?
So it's interesting. So the big fear was, what do you mean? Am I not going to see my people?
Yes.
And it's exactly the opposite of that. So what we want to do is take away the burden of the daily commute and make it about get together and connect when that's impactful for you and your team. So we will have collaboration spaces, and we're working on exactly what format that takes, whether we have a smaller space in the middle of the peninsula up here in the Bay Area, where people can come in a day or 2 a week if that's helpful, or for a couple of days if they're doing a working session or budget planning or whatever that is. But what was really clear was we need to make it so that people can gather when it's helpful for them, for the business.
Not to do, tasks that doesn't need you to be in the same room.
Precisely, right? If I'm, it's review season for us right now. So if I'm writing reviews for my team, I'm much better off in a isolated environment where I can really focus on that versus being in the office where, you can be interrupted. Now, not that having kids at home means, it's not like there's no interruption around here, but it's different, right?
Just out of curiosity, are you doing your reviews virtually?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because my wife had her review today, and I thought it was quite interesting to have that conversation. It's the first time I've seen her go through that, and obviously I'm sure everyone's going through it, doing those reviews virtually. Have you done any so far already?
I did our mid-cycle this way, and it's good. I mean, but again, if you've ever worked for a boss who is in a different city, you've done it this way already, right? I mean, it's rare that your boss travels to come and give you 45 minutes of feedback. The theme for us really has been about authentic connection. And so if we've been having real conversations like this all year, then having one more that's about, here, Zoe, is what you could do, differently in these situations that would help you be more productive for our business. Or I love it when you do this with your team. I think that really has, shone a light on what they've been doing this year. That feels okay this way.
What about obviously, health and well-being, huge focus during this. What strategies have you put in place to promote health and well-being and also promote this as part of the culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're really right that has been a priority. And actually, to me, that is one of the silver linings this year, is that mental health in particular has been far more widely discussed than it might have been in years past. We were so concerned about isolation and the impact of that, or frankly, exactly the opposite, like stress of being with the same people for an extended period of time. And so we've been talking a lot about that. We rolled out some additional mental health programs for our corporate employees, around where we all have access to, therapy on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that over text, or you can connect with a therapist, in a Zoom. And our uptake on that has been tremendous. We've also done, some things that are very like hands-on, where we have twice a week, actually somebody on our platform who's an incredible yoga teacher that does yoga and guided meditation for half an hour. The other things we've done is try and build in work practices that support more flexibility. So for example, we have customer Wednesdays where there are no internal meetings scheduled, but we can all use that to connect externally with people, and talk to them about the business, or use it for heads down work time. And it gives everybody a break from your normal day-to-day Zoom.
And everyone knows what's happening. So it's not like, so no one's even trying to schedule a time, but everyone's
exactly.
Like, what we're doing.
And doing it at the same time every week has been beneficial in that sense. We've also done things like encourage our people managers to make their one-on-ones walking one-on-ones outside, and do it via phone, but have both of you, walk around your neighborhood. And then we're, encouraging people to do really specific and clear time blocks on their calendar. And the leadership team has done this as well, and say like, okay, like for me, my boys their school lunch is 12:20 to 1:00 every day. So I try really hard not to have meetings during that time. And it says on my public calendar, boys lunch.
Oh, you actually put it as cool. So you actually put it on there as well. Nice.
It's not like Zoe's got a standing meeting. It's lunchtime for the kids, and like her kids are home, just like my kids are home.
And so like breaks down that barrier, that wall, just brings us all closer together, and just, it's great.
And so, if you need to like go and make a ham sandwich, go and make a ham sandwich. And so it's fine. Right. And I think doing those things and being really clear about it has made a big difference for us, especially where we have, people, a variety of life stages. So we've got people who are trying, parents who are nursing babies. We've got people who are like kids on nap time, and anybody who has small kids knows like nap time is all kinds of important.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then people who are checking in on elderly relatives or neighbors. And so we just wanted to normalize that and be much more transparent about it. And that has helped tremendously. And I think for so many of these things, it's really about, not doing them in the corner in the dark, but being open and shining a light on it and just humanizing this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we've done is we, I think as a company, have become much more intentional about expressing gratitude for each other, and really seeking out moments to say, hey, you did this thing for me and I really appreciated it. Or you showed up for me when I was struggling, because there was a fight downstairs about putting on your shoes, or whatever the thing was, And so I think just being more communicative, especially about the emotional side of life, has been powerful in that. that creates these moments where it doesn't feel like you have to have work Zoe and then home Zoe, because I'm sitting in, like this is, our spare room.
We need that energy as well. There's so much
Yeah.
negativity out there. You got to make the most of those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, over here in the US this year has had the additional challenge of the election politics and this, social justice reckoning around murders of Black Americans like George Floyd, and I think that for some of our employees, the burden has been magnified, tremendously. Right. And I think many people have seen this thing going around, which is like, we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. Right. And some of us are in
like times recently. Love that one.
Right. And it's really true. And so this is a hard time for all of us, but it is differently hard for some of our team. And being open and talking about that aspect of it as well, I think has really created a culture of, reinforced trust. And it's okay to talk about that. I mean, when the murders of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd happened, our head of diversity, inclusion, and belonging piloted a program that I had not heard of prior from many other companies, where we encouraged our Black employees and other people who really felt they needed it to take bereavement leave. Not just PTO, but bereavement leave. This is trauma. We're acknowledging that. It's okay. We see you.
Yeah, I haven't heard of many companies doing that, but that's great. That sends a very clear message.
It also really tells you a lot about the company for whom you work and your CEO and what leadership truly values, what your board values. I feel really fortunate to be at Upwork working for Hayden and a board that is so compassionate and, a CEO who so genuinely has people at the top of every single priority that we have as an organization. And I know colleagues who are not that fortunate in other companies and who, to your point, are like, I think I'm just going to leave. I don't have anything else lined up, but I can't be the only person in the organization who cares.
Yes.
Because I think that is the other thing. And actually, this is just one other thing I should have mentioned earlier was we built in two things. One was an additional stipend for mental health care and support for our HR team and the people carrying the weight of managing the teams through COVID. Right. And created some subgroups on Slack and regular check-ins just on that team in particular, and did a wonderful facilitation with a woman named Jill Katz, who is an HR leader. You know Jill?
No, she used to co-host my LinkedIn live show with me.
Okay, we have to have a whole separate conversation about how much I love Jill Katz.
Of course, I know Jill Katz. She's like my best.
Okay. That makes me so happy. Okay. So Jill came and did this phenomenal facilitation for us at the beginning of COVID that helped our team, who was really carrying the emotional burden of it, as well as the logistical burden, the facilities burden, the financial burden, the organizational burden, the communication burden, all of those burdens. And also looking after their own families and worried about themselves because we didn't understand a lot about how COVID was being passed at that time. And she did this incredible training that was obviously fully remote. And I have to say, in 20 plus years of HR work, it was the most powerful 2 hours I've ever participated in. Wow. And then obviously Jill Katz testimonial, but also just the need for that in an organization. And so I think it can be very easy to forget to put your own oxygen mask on. But the HR team, and that as a CHRO, that's a responsibility you carry for your team. You have to make sure that they are looking after themselves
and
taking time off.
What's powerful about Jill's work is that she's a former CHRO.
Of course, right? So she gets it. Nobody gets it.
Yes, you're not bringing in a consultant that kind of has the playbook. You're bringing in someone who's lived it, breathed it, and the passion and energy you bring along together. I'm so happy that you. Wow. Well, Jill, I'm gonna post this on LinkedIn and tag you in. So I'm saying it right now. Yeah. And it's great to hear that you work with Jill.
Yeah, she's been tremendous.
What's kind of next for you and the team moving into next year? What are some of the things that you're going to continue to do? Yeah. But more importantly, what are some of the things you're going to stop doing? Yeah, I think that's been a big focus of me actually in the team is rather than focus on what we're doing, I'm like, what should things that we've been doing that we should stop doing, that we're just doing for the sake of doing that have been in place for so long?
I love that exercise. I tell my team, if you're doing a report and you don't think anybody's reading it, stop sending it for 2 weeks and see if anybody calls you.
Yeah, exactly.
And they don't, right? And you're like, well, okay, there's an hour back. So in terms of what we're going to keep doing, we're going to keep talking about all the stuff. Every person's one-on-one in our organization right now starts with like a meaningful conversation about, how are you holding up? Tell me what's going on. How's the family? Who are you worried about? Anybody like in your periphery at work I should know about? And we've created programs to support and follow that up. And so that's been tremendous. And so that part is going to stay because that connection has really strengthened the foundation of how we work organizationally. I think what's going to stop is going to be this feeling that this is like just something we have to get through. And my hope is that as the vaccine comes, I know it started in the UK, it hasn't here yet. But as that happens, I think people are going to sort of be able to exhale a little bit, and like your shoulders are going to, like, I think we've all been in this physically like, space for such an extended period of time. But I think that is going to hopefully stop, and people will be able to make more choices about how they work. And so we know that the vast majority of people, 70+% of people who are working remotely now, have no desire to return to the office in the way that they had and are going to look for more flexibility. So my hope is Upwork is going to be a part of how they do that in the future. We're going to continue to create programs that really focus on the customer at the very heart of everything we do. And we're going to continue, I think, to be leaders and be really open about the work that we do internally, both from a social justice perspective around what we're doing for our diversity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. We publish all that. But also around how we create the world's, best hybrid workforce and how we work together. So we hope to be continuing as leaders on that front.
We're certainly in the right place.
Yeah,
in the right
I'm
moment.
So fortunate.
Kind of all came to, this is a moment for you and the team, but I really appreciate you taking the time out to.
Such a pleasure.
And before we wrap up, I'm going to jump into our quick fire round. So I don't.
Oh goodness. Okay.
No one knows about this, by the way.
I was like, this was nowhere in the prep. Okay.
No, PR and comm teams are not allowed involved in this because they always.
They'd be like, no.
300 guests have done it, so you're not the only one.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to ask you 5 questions. And you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers per question, obviously. All right.
Jolly good. Okay.
What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a chief people officer?
Oh, my own head. I was in my own way.
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt, thinking like, well, why would anybody listen to me about this? And actually, ironically, it's Hayden, who is now my boss, who is the person who was like, what are you doing? Like, come on, you've got the job. Can you behave like you've got the job? We're all ready to listen to you. Do the thing. And then I started doing the thing and I was like, oh, I can do the thing. Okay. And so I try and tell my team that.
Yeah, that's like 80% of people's answers. So
yeah, I'm sure.
You're not alone. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Oh, as an HR person, learn the business and tell the truth. And be the first person to tell the worst thing that you know to be true, privately, obviously, to whomever needs to hear it.
Yeah, great. I know you said audiobook, so I'm going to say audiobooks or books. What's one audiobook or book that you'd recommend to the audience and why? Doesn't have to be HR related, by the way.
Okay. I just reread The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. And here I have it. Right here, covered in 1,000 Post-its. And every time
you did read that.
Yeah, I did. And every time I dip into this, I find another gem. And that's a book that doesn't age as far as I'm concerned. It's fantastic.
Why should people read it? What have you taken away from it so far?
Oh, goodness. So many different things. I think the best thing that I've taken away lately is just his notion about really, really straight shooting around everything, which, obviously is how I like to live my life in general. But there's a particular nugget in there about the law of like the worst performer, which is that everybody the level below will look at the very worst manager, VP, and be like, well, I'm better than that person. So if you're not managing your performance at every single level organizationally, you are completely like fostering a notion where you don't need to be top talent to get promoted, at least in people's minds, and to take on more responsibility. And so I think that is critical because A players want to work with A players. Yeah.
Definitely don't want that knock-on effect. What about online resources? What's your go-to? If you go in the web browser or the apps, what are some of the online resources you use to stay up to date with current events, news, what's going on in the industry? What's your go-to?
I mean,
Apart from our podcast, obviously. What else?
Obviously. You know what? LinkedIn, which I feel like is a very generic answer. I will tell you also, I love specific content on Instagram from especially social justice organizations. I feel like it's a really fast place to get information about societal things that we need to take into consideration organizationally, particularly when, for example, all the protests were happening in the States around Black Lives Matter. That was a great place to get really relevant, important information and to be able to get it from a myriad of different
unbiased
perspectives.
Reviews. Yeah.
Right. And actually, I'll say, my husband is really, really good at reading news intentionally from many different angles. And we also, over here, you have to seek out international news because the US stations, are myopic sometimes.
Yeah. They're like lean on either side, don't they?
Yeah. You got to find the Times, read Al Jazeera, find the Guardian, right? Do all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Last question. What's one thing about your business that you're most excited about?
Oh, the future. We've cracked this open for everybody and the possibilities now are endless. And I'm excited for a world where, work really is no longer a place and everybody can do the thing that they do best when and how it works for them. What an amazing time to be thinking about the future of work. It's such a privilege.
Yeah. Look, amazing. Well, thanks so much for taking the time out to join us to share experience.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And good. Yeah, the microphone held up well.
I didn't knock it off the desk, which I think is the main accomplishment for today.
Or knock a coffee over. So
no, I haven't reached for that though. You noticed that I was like,
oh, you didn't have one sip. You're like, I'm not risking it.
Hands to myself.
Last thing before I let you go, there's sort of one parting piece of advice you would give to your HR peers. What would that be? And then secondly, where can people reach out to you if they want to reach out and say hello and connect with you?
Absolutely. I think the thing that I would say to my peers is look after your team and look after yourself. Model that. It's really, really hard, especially for people in this job. I think many people who are in this job were before in nonprofit work or other things like this. We sort of defaulted to business and are critical business drivers now, but you cannot drive the business forward and be the emotional sponge and kitchen junk drawer of an organization if you're not also really taking the time to step away and modeling that for your team, because they're watching how you handle it. And so if you can't do it for yourself, you need to do it for the other people, but you should do it for yourself. And then I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, Zoe Harte, and come and find me.
Amazing. Well, thanks again for everyone listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, comment, share, tagging colleagues that you feel will gain value as well. Subscribe, wherever your favorite platform is. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day, Zoe, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.